Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you are watching this video. Today's focus is going to be on two organizations called NATO and the Warsaw Pact. So what we're going to look at today, we're continuing our discussion of the Cold War and how there is a divide between capitalist and democratic countries versus communist countries. And you can really clearly see that divide on the map in front of you, that you've got countries to the west that are going to join in an organization called NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and you have countries in the east that are going to join the Warsaw Pact, and it is going to be a collection of countries that believe in one of those frameworks. So as we've been talking about, we really have this United States versus Soviet Union divide. So the United States and their allies, including Great Britain and France, are going to be capitalist countries, market-based economies. So again, we talked about the differences between communism and capitalism. In those capitalist societies, it's about individuals. It's about being able to work hard and see the advantages of that work. There's not government control. They're going to have democratic republic governments. So we elect our officials to represent us. We have rights and freedoms. And it's a very open society. It's open to its own citizens, and it's also open to other countries for trade, as opposed to the Soviet Union and their allies, the USSR, that are communist countries that are controlled by the government. The state or the government controls the economy. There are a lot less rights and freedoms in these countries. They're really dictatorships, and they're closed off from the rest of the world. So they produce everything they need within their country or with their allies, and they're not open to the rest of the world for trade or for interactions to the rest of the world. So we've kind of gone over all of these terms already, but I just wanted to review the terms. The Cold War is the era of high tension and bitter rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. So it's cold as opposed to a hot war because it's not actual fighting. It's just tension and rivalry that's developed. Now, it will turn into hot wars like the Korean War that we'll talk about later. And there'll be lots of other conflicts we can relate to the Cold War. But the Cold War itself is just talking about the time period of tension. And there's not actual physical, guns fighting. The Iron Curtain I'm going to go into in a little bit more detail here in just a second, which is a description of the division in Europe that's caused by communism, that there's this divide, that line between East and West. Containment is the policy of President Truman to resist the spread of Soviet power and influence. So we want to stop the spread of communism into other countries. And several ways we've done that is through the Truman Doctrine, which is a policy to support free nations economically to prevent the spread of communism. So, for example, countries like Greece and Turkey, they were susceptible to falling to communism, and the United States provided them with money to help build up their economies, support their democracies so that they would resist falling to a communist government. The Marshall Plan was also an example of massive economic aid to help Western Europe rebuild, so giving lots of money to France and West Germany and Great Britain so that they too would have strong economic stability and that they would continue to be allies with the United States and they would not be susceptible to falling to communism. An assignment last week that you looked at was the Berlin Airlift. Again, East and West Germany have been divided. West Germany is democratic and capitalist. East Germany is communist. And within that, Berlin is also, half of Berlin is democratic and half of the city of Berlin is communist. And the Soviets tried to prevent the United States from having access to West Berlin to try to force that part of the city to become communist. And through the airlift, we were able to drop in supplies to the West Berliners to help protect them from becoming a communist city. And lastly, what we're going to focus on today is NATO, which is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is going to be a military alliance of 12 nations to have a common defense against the Soviets. So again, as I mentioned before, I'm going to talk a little bit more detail about the Iron Curtain. which, as you can see on this map, is the division between East and West. There are two political and economic systems supported by the two superpowers of the Soviet Union and the United States. The Soviet Union controls Eastern Europe, which includes East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Bulgaria, and all of those countries become communist. The Western democracies of Britain, France, West Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, as well as allies that are not on the map, like Canada and the United States, were in opposition to the spread of communism in Europe. And so in his speech, Prime Minister Winston Churchill of Great Britain talks about this idea of an iron curtain. Now, the iron curtain itself, think of like a curtain for your windows that's made out of iron. So it's not movable. Again, this is an imaginary line, but you can see that dark line dividing the blue and the red on the map, which is an ideological conflict between Soviet communism and democratic capitalism. So, in response to that, we have the formation of NATO. NATO is a defense alliance against the Soviet Union. And the idea is if one of those countries that belongs to NATO gets attacked by the Soviet Union, then they all get attacked. This really kind of goes back to, we had these conversations talking about World War I, the alliances between countries, and when one gets attacked, they all get attacked. And so in response to that, the Soviet Union forms the Warsaw Pact, which was a defensive alliance of communist countries that said, if you attack one of us, you attack us all. The idea is meant to be defensive, that we are just showing you that we're going to protect each other. And so it's meant to be a deterrent. Don't attack us, because if you do, you're not just attacking one of us, you're attacking all of us. So you can see here the members of NATO. These are all members of NATO: Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, France, including the United States, Denmark, Iceland, and then members added later on after the original members were Greece and Turkey in 1952, West Germany by 1955, and all the way into 1982, Spain also joined the NATO alliance. So what you guys are going to do is you're going to analyze this map. So there's an accompanying assignment that goes along with this. You are going to analyze this map that shows you all of the countries in orange are NATO countries, all of the countries in green are Warsaw Pact communist countries, and all of the countries that are yellow are neutral countries in 1955. They have not joined either side. And I've got some critical thinking questions for you guys to think about how this represents what's going on in the world and this division between capitalism and communism. As always, let me know if you have any questions, either through email, or you can call me or text me, and I can answer any questions that you have. Talk to you guys soon.